The next time Nunez was dispatched to the Primrose was the last. It was some old neighbor lady. He couldn't have said which one. There weren't many tenants left. Of the 17 units that comprised the Primrose, only 10 were filled. This lady had heard a yelling coming from the apartment across the hall. A man with a deep voice, and either a woman or a young child. The dispatchers immediately recognized the apartment number. Thaddeus Wheeler. Nunez and Rusty used the back entrance. Immediately, Nunez was overtaken by the smell. Musty basement and potpourri. Rusty didn't notice. She headed straight for the elevators. Nunez looked to his right. Thaddeus Wheeler stood in the hallway. Between the janitor's storage and the underused little closet where he liked to sleep. Rusty had already disappeared through the double doors. Nunez knew he should have gone after her, but he didn't want to give the kid the opportunity to sneak away. Thaddeus Wheeler was a very troubled little boy. He needed to be institutionalized. Not for 72 hours under 55-85 hold. Long term. Until his bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or whatever drove him to argue with himself and paid his own blood was sufficiently tamed by medication. Slowly, outstretched hands in view of the boy, Nunez started down the hallway. Thaddeus smiled at him when he got close.
"Hi, officer," Thad said. "Have you figured it out yet?"
"Figured out what?" Nunez asked conversationally.
"What I am."
Thad's smile grew wider, toothed and maniacal. The musty, sweet stench was suffocating.
"Let me give you a hint,"
Thad said. Then his voice changed. It became monotonous, an alien mockery of a human voice.
"This will all burn,"
Thad said, in red-headed corpse Michael's voice.
"You will burn with it."
Nunez backpedaled. The smell was intoxicating him, drowning him. Then he noticed Thad's bare arms. The arms that had been violently slashed several weeks before with a serrated steak knife. There were no scars on those arms.
"What?"
Nunez sputtered. Thaddeus Wheeler. The thing that looked like Thaddeus Wheeler laughed.
"Bzzz. Wrong answer,"
he boomed in a grown man's voice.
"I am whatever the fuck I wanna be."
Then, lightning fast, he pulled open the closed door and vanished within. Burning adrenaline, Nunez followed. He found himself alone in an empty storage closet. The closet was... well, it wasn't what he'd been expecting. He didn't know what he had been expecting. It was a little room, maybe 10 feet by 12, with exposed concrete walls and 2 rickety shelves. A rusted lawnmower sat in the corner, and a pile of moldy boxes filled with fluorescent light bulbs rested beside one of the shelves. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the stained linoleum floor was curling. He held his breath. He couldn't bear the smell. Where had Thaddeus gotten to? There was nowhere to hide. Behind him, he heard the door slam shut. He whirled, right hand instinctively reaching for his gun. Standing in front of him, between him and the door, was his grinning doppelganger. The man wore his uniform. Nunez recognized his own pointed nose, unshaven cheeks, and receding hairline. His deep brown eyes and untamed brows. He even stood the same way, feet apart, shoulders hunched forward, leaning on his right leg. The man was Officer Carlos Nunez, and he, like the real Nunez, was reaching for his gun. Not thinking, not feeling, operating solely on instinct, Nunez shot, 3 times. He heard the bullets hit, pop, 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 then ringing in his ears. And then silence. He stood frozen. Sweat-drenched hands threatened to drop his loaded weapon, trembling and drawing deep, ragged breaths. And the dust settled. He blown 3 holes through the flimsy wooden door. But again, he found himself alone. He was a middle-aged officer of the law with years of experience, abandoning his partner and hiding in closets, shooting at figments of his imagination. Then, there was a mighty crack, then a bang, then a scream, then no more screams. He exited the room to the hallway, and immediately he found himself swept up in a minor exodus. Wild-eyed residents, scantily clad moms with kids, old couples in sweats, piled out of the stairways, fleeing for the exits. Nostrils now clear of the musty, sweet closet stench. Nunez smelled smoke. Then the alarm began blaring. "Fire!" screamed an immaculate middle-aged man, running from the stairwell. Nunez screamed into his radio, insisting dispatch send every available unit to the Primrose apartment now. He ran up the stairs, crying the alarm, assisting old women with walkers, scooping up toddlers, hurrying the residents towards the safety of the evening air. When the last stragglers had been evacuated, Nunez surveyed the scene. In the distance, he heard sirens. Then he noticed the residents were all clustered around the same spot in the parking lot, too close to the burning building. A woman screamed. Nunez pushed his way through the throng. A body laid there, sprawled face down, blood pooling around what had been its head. The small, dark form was obviously dead. Spongy gray tissue had been splattered across the asphalt. He fell, someone said. Or he jumped. Poor little boy. His broken arms were extended, as though he embraced the sky. Then Nunez saw the scars on the scattered excrements. And he knew. It took until early hours in the morning to extinguish the flames, and weeks to even begin cleaning up the mess. Ambulances came and left, 14 injuries in all. The burn unit at the county hospital must have had an interesting night. The uninjured residents, barred from returning to their apartments by the police and fire brigade, trudged to the bus stop or the waiting cars of the sympathetic friends. Those with nowhere else to go milled around for hours. Finally, a church down the street agreed to take them in. Nunez saw Marisol and her sobbing son, shaken Dolores and stone-faced Michael. Then came the coroner's van. When the ash had dissipated, and the ruined building finally cooled, 9 bodies were recovered. One of them was Rusty. Another, Lydia Wheeler. Lydia had died of smoke inhalation in her room. It was never confirmed or denied, but whispered amongst the firefighters that she had been locked in. A gas explosion had occurred in the kitchen of Lydia Wheeler's apartment. Little Thaddeus lit a match. He set his mother's couch on fire. He turned on the stove, and before the entire floor was engulfed in flames, he jumped out of the window. Mows were thrown around. Finally, it was decided that the little boy was a paranoid schizophrenic, and the entire tragedy was the claustrophobic side effect of his psychosis. Then Nunez experienced an ass shooting, if not a suspension, for chasing specters while his partner was trapped in an inferno. So he was much surprised to be greeted as a hero. Some of the people he helped out of the building credited him with saving their lives. The human face of the tragedy, as presented by local newscasters, was Rochelle Crane, Thaddeus' older sister. She was lucky. She's been out of the apartment with her daughter and little brother at the time, getting ice cream. Rochelle spoke kindly of Nunez, saying he and Rusty had been the only officers who cared about her poor, doomed sibling and mother. They fixed up the building, but, not surprisingly, nobody wanted to live there. the stubborn residents who remained until the fire had come to their senses. So the Primrose apartments were abandoned, repossessed by the bank. For years, the building remained empty, serving as a temporary camp for transients and junkies. But they sold it now, Nunez told me, withered eyes flashing. They sold it to some healthcare corporation. It's going to be a convalescent home. Did you tell anyone what you saw? I asked him. He nodded. The cops I worked with, they said they believed me. There was something weird about that place. Everyone knew it. But the thing with unexplainable crap is, no one wants to officially believe me. Because that would mean they're crazy. He chuckled humorously and shook his head. Fuck it. I think I was crazy. Maybe I should show them the tapes. He stole the security tapes from evidence storage. Months and months of footage. They've been collected by the detective in charge of investigating the fire, per procedure, but assumed to be worth little. There had only been 3 security cameras installed at the Primrose apartments, 1 at each entrance, and 1 in the elevator lobby. And of the 3, only 2 had been functional. The tapes monitoring the front entrance were useless. The tapes monitoring the elevator lobby left him with more questions than answers. I wanted to see the man with a copy of the Winchachi World, Marissa's ex-husband, he told me. The one that was supposedly in Washington. I thought if I saw him in the tapes, it would prove that I wasn't delusional. He shrugged. His tired eyes watered. But he wasn't there. I found the tape from that day. I saw Rusty and me coming out of the elevator. I saw myself run back into the frame. I rewound the tape and saw Modesto. I saw a ghostly figure. A cloud of smoke. It looked like gray and translucent, like a 3-dimensional shadow, roughly the shape of a human being. I saw this shadow person accost Modesto. I saw Modesto try and punch it, and I saw it float away. I saw it standing there, leaning against the wall by the elevator. I stayed up all night, looking through the rest of the tapes. The shadow figure was there, again and again, with people all around. And the people interacted with it, as though it were another human being. When no one was around it, faded, disappeared into thin air. That's when I saw little Thad. He was in several of the tapes, always in pajamas, always at night, always the same. He emerged from the elevator half asleep, with the shadowy gray thing guiding him, draped around him, leading him like a parent. They walk across the lobby and out of the frame towards that closet. I think that's where it lives. Nunez took the tapes out of the station and took them to a friend who tested the authenticity of the footage. The friend concluded the tapes had not been tampered with, and Nunez showed the tapes to his superiors. They lectured him about mishandling evidence, told him they'd look into it, and let him off with a warning. It was suggested he see a therapist. Rusty's death had obviously hit him hard. It was getting late, or more correctly, getting early. Nunez looked at his watch, sighed, and crumpled his coffee cup in his hand. He had to go to work, and so did I. The black sky had blanched to periwinkle blue, and the first of the morning customers were filtering in. It's sick. Evil, Nunez said in conclusion. The shadowy figure. It can change shape, become anyone it wants, disappear into thin air. It screws with people, makes their nightmares real. Modesto was jealous, Dolores was obsessed, and little Thad was devastated, missing his father. trying to make sense of the afterlife. It turned itself into Marisol's husband, Michael, Thad's father. It tortured them emotionally. It drove Thad crazy. And you? I asked him. He smiled at me. I stumbled over an inside joke. I'm the guy who tells these tales, he said. What's the fun of being an evil spirit if nobody talks about you?